Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavnibhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna. I'd like to welcome all the viewers and the devotees who will be watching this discussion on very important topic of reading Srila Prabhupada's books every day and regularly. Its importance in our personal spiritual life and its importance in strengthening ISKCON as a movement for the many, many years to come. Today we have the good fortune of having with us His Holiness Krishna Kshetra Maharaj. Krishna Kshetra Maharaj is an initiating spiritual master within ISKCON. He is a scholar, he has a PhD, where his works concentrated on Srimad Bhagavatam and the writings of the Goswamis. And currently, or recently, Maharaj has also published a book on Mother Cow and her service. So on that note, I'd like to welcome His Holiness Krishna Kshetra Maharaj for this discussion. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Nice to be
Maharaj,
with you.
Thank you again for joining us for this discussion on the topic of reading Srila Prabhupada's books.
My pleasure. I hope
Maharaj,
I can contribute something worthwhile.
Well, I'm quite confident that by the end of this discussion, we'll have many gems from the mine of your treasure of Srimad Bhagavatam over the years. Maharaj, would you recollect what was your first encounter with Srila Prabhupada's books?
First encounter was the day I joined the temple in Heidelberg. That was in 1972, Heidelberg, Germany.
Yes.
And devotees, of course, had a few books, not very many. They had, I think by that time, they may have had a German Ishopanishad. There was Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, the abridged edition. It was a kind of purple book, paperback. And they had first canto Bhagavatam in 3 volumes, and the second canto was coming in paperback. It was coming sort of chapter by chapter in small editions, I remember. And each time we would get one of the new second canto chapters, we would sort of, dare I say, we would devour it immediately. And
Maharaj, from your very first book that you touched or you read, do you remember what it was and share with us something that may have touched your heart deeply?
Well, Ishopanishad, of course, I was especially struck by the invocation, Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avashishyate. The complete whole is complete in itself. You take away the complete whole and you still have the complete whole. I thought, yeah, this is what I'm looking for.
Maharaj, I remember when I first read that, it took me a while to really understand it. It was almost like from a logical sequence, very difficult to comprehend.
Yeah.
You know, if you come from a science background or from other backgrounds.
Spiritual mathematics.
Yes. Was it easy to accept for the heart, that kind of philosophy? Did you have a previous exposure to be able to easily comprehend? Or was it just special mercy that you picked it up and you could understand the spiritual nature of these books?
Or a combination of both. I had a bit of exposure, maybe it was a year before I met the devotees. I came across a translation of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which had, of course, English translation, but it also had Devanagari text, transliteration, word for word, and commentary, exactly in the same format as Srila Prabhupada's books. I think it may have been published by the Theosophical Society. So I was reading that, and in the commentary more than once, the explanation was given that actually in this age, it's not really possible to, to follow this process. However, one can, in this age, one can practice bhakti yoga. But then there was no further explanation of what is bhakti yoga. And of course, in those days, there was no internet. You couldn't just Google what is bhakti yoga. So when I met the devotees, the first day they told them, we practice bhakti yoga. Oh, you practice bhakti yoga. That's what I'm looking for. And so I was
must have been
quite
written
ready.
by a very wise man, that book that you referred to, because quite extraordinary, a book on Yoga Sutras, ending with saying that not practical anymore, you should seek for bhakti yoga.
Yeah, I don't remember who the author was, but I've always appreciated it as a kind of Vartma Pradarshaka guru, I guess you can say. So then so that kind of primed me. So when I began reading Srila Prabhupada's books, I was very open to absorb what I was reading, and it was making sense for me. It was I guess I was blessed in some way.
Maharaj, were you reading prior to receiving Prabhupada's books and joining this movement? Were you mentioned about Patanjali Yoga Sutras, were you reading other literature of spiritual or religious nature prior to this?
Not so much. Well, some of there in those days, probably everyone that I knew read Autobiography of a Yogi.
Yes.
Paramahansa Yogananda, in which he tells all these kind of amazing stories of mystical experiences and so on. And that was a kind of inspiration at the time. And that could be one thread. Another thread was I was going to University of California in Berkeley, and there was something of interest in India in the air at that time, and also the devotees were there. There was a temple. I never went to the temple, but I saw the devotees every day doing kirtan, harinam, just next to the main entrance, the main gate to the university campus. 5 days a week, probably 6 hours a day, they were doing harinam, and
wow.
that leaves an impression.
It definitely would. So I mixed it up a little bit. You came in touch with the books in Heidelberg in Germany,
Yes.
and then you were just visiting back home from university, or then you moved to university after reading Ishopanishad?
No, it's the other way around. I was a university student, again at UC Berkeley. I saw the devotees. I received one or two Back to Godhead magazines from them and read them, we can say, with casual interest at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, okay, these are nice people. They're obviously serious about what they're doing, whatever it is. But I never actually spent time speaking with them, or I probably could have saved 2 years of my life. So 2 years later, from university, I dropped out of university, came to Europe, and there I met the devotees in Heidelberg. And as they say, the rest is history.
Yes. Maharaj, what was the culture in Germany, in the movement in Germany, ISKCON in Germany, in the early 70s, 72, 73? What was the culture of reading Prabhupada's books? How significant was it? What was the mood of the devotees?
Well, as I said, when new books would come, we would kind of devour them. One book that I very much remember coming just without any expectation at all, Srila Prabhupada had devotees, as he was translating Chaitanya Charitamrita, he told the devotees to publish as a separate book Adi Lila chapter 7. I'm not sure if it included chapter 8. I think maybe 7 and 8. And that book was called Lord Chaitanya in 5 Features.
Yes.
And we got that book and we also devoured it. And from that, we just would practically run out on the street to distribute books because, this is where Krishnadas Kaviraj says that with the Panchatattva, Lord Chaitanya plundered the storehouse of love of Godhead, and so on. All that is in especially those 2 chapters. So that there was this sense of a direct connection. You read the books and then, oh, yes, get out there and share it with others. And I also remember sometimes while on the street, if I would feel my enthusiasm flagging a bit, I would just stop and open a Bhagavad Gita and read a page. And then, oh, yes, this, people need this. Okay, so then I would continue. On the other side, I would say that there wasn't a whole lot of encouragement to sit down in the temple for 1 or 2 hours and read, because the mood was everything will be realized if you just get out on the street and distribute the books. Whatever's in the books, you will realize just by distributing. That was sort of the mantra. But I also remember distinctly thinking, it was one day after a senior devotee had given a Bhagavatam class. It was a kind of short class in which the conclusion was, therefore, let's get out there on the street and distribute the books. I was thinking, yes, but I want to also, go a bit deeper in the books. And so that feeling, I didn't make any verbal protest at the time, but I was thinking at the time, we can go deeper than this. Let's, give it some more time.
It's very interesting, Maharaj, you mentioned this, because I was thinking about the letter from Srila Prabhupada about churning the milk now. It came around the same time, 73, 74, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Where Prabhupada said himself that now devotees should go deep.
Yes, and at that time, it's been estimated, I just have this number in my memory. Someone said at that time, there were maybe altogether 300 devotees in the whole movement.
Right. Yes, yes. Maharaj, in terms of your association with Srila Prabhupada's books, what impact has it had in your personal spiritual life?
Before we go to that, I want to tell also one early episode.
Yes, please.
From when it was actually my first service to Srila Prabhupada, practical service. As I mentioned, I joined the devotees in Heidelberg, and it was just 2 weeks later that the news came that Srila Prabhupada would be coming to Paris in France. And so naturally, all of us in the German yatra gathered and then drove to Paris to meet Prabhupada. And we met him as he arrived in the airport, the Paris airport. And moments after we saw Srila Prabhupada and threw ourselves on the floor, and Srila Prabhupada walked by, then someone tapped me on the shoulder, I guess it was his servant, and said, "Come with me and help to gather Srila Prabhupada's luggage from the luggage place." So we went downstairs to the luggage carousel, and then the servant pointed out which bags were Srila Prabhupada's. And one of those suitcases was very heavy. And I said, Prabhu, what is in this suitcase? And he said, those are Srila Prabhupada's books. He travels with the Sanskrit commentaries, and he reads these commentaries to write, to speak and record his commentaries. And that opened up a whole understanding which I didn't have before. Later, I would come to see, I think it was, it would have been 6 years later when I first came to Mayapur, and it was 1978 after Srila Prabhupada had left, and we came to Prabhupada's room, and I saw in the bookcase this set of Sanskrit commentaries, this sort of dark, or not so dark green, very thick books, which were published in Ahmedabad, and later I've come to know them much more. But I realized this is Prabhupada is, in the early mornings, what is he doing? He is entering into the world of the Bhagavatam with all these commentators from the previous acharyas. And from that, he is putting together, he is gathering together, and he's speaking his Bhaktivedanta purports. So I always appreciated that there was this process that Prabhupada had for sharing his realizations with us.
Metaphorically speaking, you carried those books with you for Srila Prabhupada on that day. And obviously after that, for now past 48 years that it may be, you're still carrying them in your heart. Maharaj, I do want to apologize if I sometimes sound I'm interrupting. It could be because there's a lag in the a lag in the streaming. So I say this with folded hands. Please do stop me if I'm interrupting, and
No, no
I have no
problem.
intention to do that. Is there something else you like to share on that incident?
No, just that little memory was there, and I felt blessed in that way that I got that opportunity. It was a little service. I don't know why the devotee took me. I'm kind of small in stature. I think he should have taken a bigger, stronger devotee for that heavy suitcase.
Well, perhaps it was that unasked question in your heart, which is that we should be going deeply into Srila Prabhupada's books on that lecture day that you talked about, which gave access, from what I can see, to what it means to go deeply, to understand Srila Prabhupada's mood. For me, this is a revolutionary, very important message.
Yeah, yes.
So I go back to my the question I wanted to ask, which is, now that you're carrying that message for 48 years, what impact has it had on your spiritual life and growth in your personal spiritual life, Maharaj?
Impact. It's hard to, I like to think in terms of comparisons, and in this case, I would have to make a comparison which is only hypothetical, because having spent all this time with Srila Prabhupada's books, but also, of course, the whole process of Krishna consciousness, association of devotees, I can't say what would life have been without, So the impact, I would say the minimal impact is the Srila Prabhupada's books are integral to keeping me doing what I'm doing, continuing to practice, trying to share with others, trying to help others to also appreciate Srila Prabhupada's words. And it's impacted me in a way which I would say it's, Shastras, we understand from Shastra that the ideal, well, what scholars will call the ideal readers, literature criticism, they speak of the ideal reader that the author is picturing. I'm far from the ideal reader, but I'm understanding from Shastra that the aim is to become Shastra Chakshu, to see through the eyes of Shastra. And so I would say impact for me is always this encouragement. Let me try to see the world, see the world in a sense through the eyes of Shastra. And that's an ongoing process, of course.
What fruits does this ongoing process bear, Maharaj?
The fruits. Nigama kalpa tarorgalitang palang shukamukad amrita drava samyutam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam mahura ho rasika bhuvi bhavuka. We are enjoined to relish the fruits. Well, that verse that I just quoted, verse number 2 of the first chapter, Canto 1, is urging us to become relishers, connoisseurs. The French word connoisseur means one who has refined taste. And so what I would say I'm working on as I read, in particular Bhagavatam, is to get some sense of what that means. What is it to have a refined taste? And of course, that to me helps appreciate every day that I read just how deeply rich our literature is. I personally like to, sometimes I think in sort of visual terms, and I like to organize my thoughts sometimes as mind maps, you can say. And with respect to Srila Prabhupada's books, I like to think of the Srimad Bhagavatam in the center of a kind of mandala. And you know, like we see sometimes a mandala will have, or a yantra, it'll have circles, and then there may be some lotus leaves, and there will be sort of also square formation, 4 sides to the yantra. So this is a bigger topic, but I like to arrange Srila Prabhupada's books. There's the Bhagavatam in the center. There's Srila Prabhupada's commentary, let's say for the sake of imagining, on the upper side of the square. And Srila Prabhupada is referring very often to other Vedic literature. And I locate that Vedic literature, starting with the Vedic Samhitas and going through the Upanishads to the Itihasas and the Puranas. I mentally like to locate these on the lower side. We may want to say the south side. This can all be arranged. This is kind of arbitrary, but for now we can imagine. And with Srila Prabhupada on the upper side, the north side, are the commentators, our Vaishnava commentators, starting with Srila Rupa Goswami, whose book Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, of course, Srila Prabhupada's Nectar of Devotion, is what he called a summary study. Jumping back down to the south side, we have Bhagavad Gita, which is, of course, embedded, you can say, within Mahabharata. And Srila Prabhupada, somewhat different from his own Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, seems to have, in some ways, emphasized Chaitanya Charitamrita more than Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada, for preaching in the West, especially emphasized Bhagavad Gita. And therefore, we see in Prabhupada's Bhagavatam purports many times referring to, and of course throughout his lectures, referring to, quoting from Bhagavad Gita. So he's drawing up from Bhagavad Gita. He's drawing down, so to say, from the 6 Goswamis. He's drawing down also from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj. And we can say, I locate Chaitanya Charitamrita also above this chart because it's within our Gaudiya tradition. And we can say that the Chaitanya Charitamrita is itself a commentary to the Bhagavatam, with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the ideal reader of the Bhagavatam. He is You know, he is simply living the Bhagavatam like no one else. And we could say so much more about that. Yeah, so like that, but then you may ask, okay, what do I have on the left side and the right side of this yantra, or the east side and the west side? And here I put on the right side, or the east side, if we want to picture this, we put the present day devotees, practitioners, myself included, and perhaps I should say especially myself, as the reader, as the person who is trying to read and relish and have my heart moved by the Bhagavatam and all of Srila Prabhupada's books. And so there's myself, but I'm not in a vacuum. I'm hearing from all of the devotees. So many devotees are giving classes with their realizations. I'm also bringing my own background. I don't erase my own background, my own experience growing up, my experience today, day by day. All these things I'm bringing to what I read. And then on the left side, or the west side, I bring, or I picture all kinds of literature which has some connection, even in the most broad sense, to God consciousness. And my basis for doing this is a comment that Srila Prabhupada made in at the end of a lecture in Los Angeles, 1969. He invited questions, and one lady asked Srila Prabhupada, what about Joan of Arc? Mm-hmm. Joan of Arc, who is Joan of Arc? Prabhupada knew who is Joan of Arc. And his response was essentially, yes, Joan of Arc, she is also part of Bhagavatam because she is a saint, and saints are surrendering to God. He didn't put it in quite such terms, but that was the basic idea. He said, that is also Bhagavatam. So there's the Bhagavatam proper, we can say, with, as tradition tells us, 18,000 verses. But there's living Bhagavatam, which expands out. And our acharyas are showing us how this happens. So I like to, as I'm reading, I want to have a sense that this entire yantra is present as I'm reading.
Very enlightening, Maharaj. Thank you.
I hope I didn't drift off the topic too much.
No, I think the perspective that I carry from what you just mentioned is the following. I asked you, what's the impact of Srimad Bhagavatam in your personal life? And you helped us understand, before I understand the impact, it's very important for every devotee to understand what's their position in the mandala. You know, if you don't know the relationship, how can we really understand what impact it will have? So I was able to take away the essence of what you just spoke, how individual personality, individual experiences become a living Bhagavatam. I was also enlivened while you were speaking. I remembered three significant instances from Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. I was intrigued when I opened up Srimad Bhagavatam first, that how right at the introduction, Prabhupada spent page 7 to page 41 describing the life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I sort of got it, it's important. But it was only towards the end of the 12th canto when it starts to describe in one of the verses the book Bhagavat and the person Bhagavat. So of course, my natural trajectory was to then move on and read Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is what we recommended. And that verse in the 12th canto, the book Bhagavat and the person Bhagavat, sort of showed me the light. I became so enlivened. I said, now I know what I'm going to find in Chaitanya Charitamrita, because I was trying to put it in a perspective.
Yes.
And recently, I was reading the end of Madhya Lila in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and there are two significant, very, very powerful statements come. One is that quote from Garuda Purana, where it's described what is Srimad Bhagavatam. It summarizes the Vedanta Sutra, all the Itihasas, and this is the essence. That part, and when I'm looking at all of this together, it helps. Then in that verse, I get that how Srila Prabhupada points us back to the center of the mandala. You know, we read Chaitanya Charitamrita, and through the life of Mahaprabhu, every day he's hearing Bhagavatam, then specifically here he points us back to the center of mandala. So I'm grateful. I'm very grateful for the perspective that you offered, and this is the right way for us to, instead of us just talking about what impact here and there, it's very important to understand the overall mandala, and which in some ways we call the schema of our life, and it's how it's operating. Maharaj, you are an educator. You study Bhagavatam. You've also written books. I want to ask you, from a very a normal person's point of view, this question comes up. What is the significance of Srimad Bhagavatam and Srila Prabhupada's books in the field of education, and in general, and specifically for ISKCON devotees? How should education be defined vis-a-vis Srila Prabhupada's books, and what is the significance of Srila Prabhupada's books in really getting us educated?
That's a big question that I'm just recently have been specifically thinking about. Perhaps one aspect of I can approach this partially, so to say, and that is I just came a few days ago across some notes that I had made for a presentation. It was in 2014, and I think it was for some education conference, ISKCON education conference, but I could only find this one sheet, and the rest was missing, and I couldn't find the file in my computer. But with this one sheet, I became a little inspired, because what it was is giving suggestions of how a teacher might take one episode from Krishna book, from Krishna's pastimes of killing Vatsasura, and could lead class discussions. And specifically, I bring in the way that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur suggests that all of the demons that Krishna kills or subdues, in first part of 10th canto, can be identified with the various anarthas which we want to destroy from our hearts in order to engage in pure devotional service. So this got me thinking, maybe I can involve some other devotees in developing something like a teacher's guide. I know some things have already been done. We do have some works being done, and maybe this has already been done, and I'm just not aware. But I think, and I have now a couple of devotees who have begun to work on this. I think there can be more than one teacher's guide to the same thing also. But what I want to say is that through direct guidance, with the help of devotees who are more experienced with the books, we, I think, can help use Srila Prabhupada's books, engage Srila Prabhupada's books in a wide range of educational purposes. I know Gurukul teachers are doing this, but also homeschooling teachers are doing this. I'm not myself so much involved in early education. Mine is the more, for the grown-ups, college level. Also, we're doing various efforts. But our particular effort, I say myself and His Grace Radhika Raman Prabhu worked over a period of years to prepare 2 books, which have been published by an academic publisher, Columbia University Press, for use in university classrooms to expose students and engage them. What students? These would be probably students of, we can say, religion in general. The study of religion is an academic area of study, field of study, very much established in the West. It's been put to the side largely in India for various reasons, but we're involved in making changes in that regard in India. And maybe that's for another interview sometime. With these 2 books, one which is a kind of reader with selections from the Bhagavatam, the other is a collection of articles by scholars, many of whom are practicing Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and all the others are highly sympathetic to the tradition. Articles which are thematic, approaching the Bhagavatam thematically as a kind of companion. So for someone who has no clue about the tradition at all, we're trying to help them to come in to understand what is involved just in the process of reading. So, for example, I have written one article of I think it's 12 articles altogether, in which I sort of, I take the whole account of the appearance of Lord Nrsingadev and the person, the Bhagavata person, Prahlad Maharaj, and I sort of walk the reader through that story with the understanding, the assumption that they have no clue before reading this article. What is going on? What is the kind of what are some of the expectations from Puranas in general, not only the Bhagavatam? So like that, we're trying to give opportunity for Prabhupada wanted that Krishna consciousness reach what he called sometimes the intelligent class of people. And of course, where do you find them? They're going to universities. So we're trying to.
And it's sort of ironical that the intelligent class do require a step-by-step guide to enter into the world of the Bhagavatas, and understandably so, to build the context and for them to appreciate. this definitely would be a very valuable effort, Maharaj, to bring that appreciation.
This goes back, I should say, if I may, and now I'm interrupting you, but it goes back to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. You know, perhaps the very first essay that he wrote on the Bhagavatam, the Bhagavata, its theology, ethics, and philosophy. He is lamenting that the educated class of his time, who in those days were known as the Bhadralok, that they were all rejecting the Bhagavatam.
Mm.
And what he's doing in that essay is he's trying to bring them back. He's trying to show them why the Bhagavatam, he says, yes, the Bhagavatam is difficult. It's true, but you have to give it some effort. And yes, the Bhagavatam has ideas which you may find you cannot appreciate. And then he speaks about himself. He says, I prayed to the Lord to reveal, to understand. Specifically, he's talking about Krishna and the gopis, how to understand this relationship properly. He says, I prayed sincerely, and then it was revealed to me. So that goes back to, that essay was 1869. So he's also anticipating challenges for students of today.
Yes, yes. And Maharaj, from the land of Navadvip, from the seat of learning, I pray to Mahaprabhu that your effort that you're putting together moves from the first essay all the way to the 12th essay that you're contemplating. Maharaj, we may be running out of time shortly.
Yes.
I want to request you if I can schedule another interview, another time to take this conversation forward, if that would be convenient.
Yes, we can speak more. Sure, I'm happy.
Because there's so much more that there's so much more we want to know from you.
Yes.
For this particular discussion, and in the spirit that we're celebrating this whole week to encourage devotees to read Srila Prabhupada's books, and for leaders especially, to encourage the ones that they're giving shelter to, guiding in the communities, congregations, temples, to do the same. Would you like to give a parting message, Maharaj, to encourage the leaders and the congregations to read Prabhupada's books?
Yes, I would have, perhaps, can I give 2 messages?
Yes, please.
Okay, one is that I encourage devotees to read Srila Prabhupada's books by encouraging them to write about what they read.
Yes.
Now, for many devotees, this is like asking to, pull their teeth out or something. It's like writing. Are you kidding? So we also need to show examples of writing, and there's so many different types, and there are many devotees who are doing wonderful writing. And I want to give one example here. Mother Vishakha Devi, my god sister, several years ago wrote a collection, or put together a collection of her own reflections on Bhagavad Gita. I think it's called Harmony and the Bhagavad Gita. Wonderful meditations, which really make the Bhagavad Gita so accessible. So that kind of writing, I encourage devotees to do. The other, and I could say more about that, but the other suggestion that I want to make is to sit down and make a little list of 2, 3, 4, maybe 10, what I would call affirmations, reading affirmations. And this is a little bit copying from, inspired by my godbrother Mahatma Prabhu, who wrote japa affirmations, 20 japa affirmations. So from that book, even without the book, one can get ideas. What is an affirmation? Specifically, it's a statement in the present tense, which is positive. And even if it's not yet true, we allow ourselves to realize it in course of time. So a statement can be, for example, every time I read Srila Prabhupada's books, I feel grateful to Srila Prabhupada. Every time I read Prabhupada's books, I get some new insight for my day's life. Like that, you can make them up and then refer to them to take inspiration to actually sit down and read.
Maharaj, both of them are very inspiring messages, and I think they'll go a long way in encouraging us and immersing ourselves in Srila Prabhupada's books. I don't know, I mean, I can say for myself, for whatever it is worth, I'll definitely try to follow that in due course of my readings. And hopefully by the time we have our next talk, I can send you in advance what I've done, but I want to have my next conversation with you to hear from you your own affirmations, because the two that you just mentioned are the sort of words that I want to hear and reflect on. Maharaj, I'm really grateful for your time today. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much.
I hope to have your association again soon on this very important topic of reading Srila Prabhupada's books.
Thank you,
Maharaj.
and thank you so much, and all the best for the remainder of this whole project.
With your blessings, we're sure we are. It's actually, Maharaj, it's not a gimmick. We're not doing like this the week is assigned by the GBC body to encourage, but the whole fruit out of this week should be that devotees read every day, and if they've started the journey, they accelerate it. If they're not started, they start the journey. Wherever we are, whatever stage, we take the next step. And we will keep reminding every year during this week that share with us your affirmations, taking inspiration from your own affirmations. Please move forward. And as you described, and then transform ourselves. Maharaj, thank you so much again. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Srila Prabhupada's transcendental books. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyascha patitanam pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.